All right, I just finished Professor Jeremy Walker's instant classic 2020 academic book subtitled The Tangled Roots of Ecology, Energy, and Economics. And he has a great line in the book: the invisible hand operates an invisible machine. So let's dig in. This book was a very personal read to me because it completely captured my undergraduate degree at University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was one of the first, if not the first, graduate in the newly devised environmental option of international relations. And I came to the exact same conclusions that this Professor Jeremy Walker did, only I did it 30 years ago, in 1994. So I even looked to see if he referenced Hazel Henderson's book, The Politics of the Solar Age, because his book reminded me very much of her book that I used as the basis for my environmental economics paper. And my instructor first asked me to change my topic, and I refused to change my topic, and instead I doubled down and found more sources to write my environmental economics paper, and based on the same sources that Jeremy Walker relies on. And my instructor then passed my paper around to his colleagues in his department, and they were all PhD students. And they covered my paper in red marks where they thought I should have a comma or a semicolon or something. They'd put a big red circle. And the only comment on the paper was, "I still think economists are smarter than you think they are." And that was it. No engagement with the actual content of the environmental economics paper, but I did get a B grade, so that's got to be worth something. Now, having read this book, I can completely understand why the economists that taught that environmental economics course were freaking out about my reliance on thermodynamics for environmental economics. So here we go. What remains recognized? I'm just going to paraphrase here. Both economics and ecology developed their claims from the combustion engineers in the mid-19th century traced to a foundational relation to the thermodynamics law of energy and entropy, and in turn to older concepts of equilibrium and natural law. And so by older, we're talking Plato. That's how old we're talking about when we say natural law and equilibrium. We really mean Archytas and Plato. But he doesn't get into that, but that's okay, because he does get into Newton. He mentions Newton a bit. So next, while concepts of natural law are deeply rooted, there you go. That's again back to Plato. And the development of the steam engine was really foundational to developing scientific materialism. And so in 1847, I have my own commentary whether, 1847, the law of conservation of energy stated that the quantity of energy in a closed system is constant and can be neither created nor destroyed in all the transformations, but only converted. So then, that became economics. It was all based on this requirement to maintain equilibrium in the steam engine. And this is what's hilarious, right? Because the steam engine was sort of like free energy. That's what it seemed like, in a way. So now you could develop economics as a new science based on this principle of balance. And you always hear this word balance all the time, and even in progressive circles they still use this word, and they don't realize it's coming from the steam engine. It all goes back to the steam engine and mining coal, and what a bonanza of energy it was. And so then he makes the point that this development of economics from equilibrium of energy ignored the second law of thermodynamics that stated that the so by ignoring this, you already had a difference between economics and ecology. By contrast, economic theory had excluded all phenomenon accounted for by the second law. So the second law is basically saying you get external energy from the sun and fire and photosynthesis, and then you dissipate that. And this was ignored in economics, and instead they just fixated on this sort of abstract energy concept of balance and equilibrium using the supply and demand model. And so then this developed into the there was something like the Montpellier Society or something in Austria, and Milton Friedman was part of that, and he literally says that if you spend money on pollution controls above the requirement by law, then it's socialism. So this is something I can relate to from my dad's career in the law, required by the law. I'm not going to get into that, but okay, so then, so we get this whole Austrian economics, but his whole point was like, look, if they weren't being financially supported by the fossil fuel industry, then this whole school of economics wouldn't have really gotten much attention. In other words, they're a bunch of brown nosers. Nobody's going to say that outright, but that's essentially what he's saying. And so then, I didn't know this, but Hayek, he did not like positivism. He was against. See, because I figured, well, they're both from Vienna, so I figured he'd be into positivism, but no, because they argued that economics was not based on empirical contact with natural phenomena, but rather was totally subjective and based on this just sort of like, you just make it up. And so it went against the a priori subjectivism of Austrian economics, the logical positivism. So they were even against positivism. I was surprised by that. And sure enough, the Nobel Prize in economics that we keep hearing about is not the Nobel Prize. That's just another scam. It's actually this bank that offers a prize in honor of Nobel, and they're a Swedish bank. So it's like they totally are lying to everybody by calling it the Nobel Prize in economics. Just another big scam. And I got pulled into that scam. I was always suspicious about it. I'm like, why don't they? Nobel's original endowment did not consider economics a science nor a worthy contribution to peace or the humanities. So it's like, don't call it the Nobel Prize in economics. Come on. It's totally, typical fascism where they gotta lie. Okay, his model economy produces but a single undefined commodity ex nihilo. In it, there is no scarce, non-augmentable resource like land. Now, so this is one of the founders of the neoliberal, free market neoliberal, like my teachers, my instructors. This is what so these guys, they literally taught that economics is just based on energy, and there is no scarce resource like land that economics is based on. In other words, it's literally insane, because obviously obviously economics is based on land. You got to grow food. You got to, cut down trees and mine resources, and it's all based on the land originally. Okay, so constant returns to scale seems the natural assumption to make in a law of growth, natural theory of constant growth. Must surely encounter the objection that no biotic entity can live without land, nor increase in size the more it increases in size without consuming resources and encountering some limit. It is surely a matter of the most elementary empiricism that economic growth is a cumulative material phenomenon that transforms the environment. And so, I did not realize that economics was as bad as it actually is. Like, they're totally insane. And how did they get away with this? Well, the Cato Institute, funded by the Kochs, it's because they're a bunch of brown nosers, and they're funded by the aristocratic elites that are, billionaires. So they can say this totally whacked out, crazy stuff. Okay, so there can be no pollution because pollution cannot exist, because that means the markets are not naturally optimizing the social allocation of environmental goods and bads. Once one understands the saying the environment is polluted is equivalent to saying that markets are dirty. It's just like, it's rich. That's the word they use. That's really rich. So you literally cannot say that pollution exists because you're going against the market religion, based on the steam engine. It all goes back to the steam engine. Okay, so now we get down to Milton Friedman again saying that, reality doesn't matter. We don't need empirical testing because human behavior is equivalent to a mathematical solution of a constrained optimization problem. In other words, just make up some calculus with some supply and demand model, and this is exactly the criticism I had in my environmental economics course. So I'm like, they're making all these stupid assumptions that don't exist. Machines provide technological proof that science works. So this is hilarious. It's like even the wonkiest science deniers fly Boeings to the conferences of the Heartland Institute. These machines can be taken to speak with the clear voice of an objective nature. In other words, you don't need nature because you have machines. Machines run on energy, and nature is energy. So if we fly a jet, we are disproving, the nature, right? We don't need. There's no pollution because machines work. It's just like, you can just say whatever. It's cocky. It's really cocky. Okay. Conversely, economic theory devotes itself to analyzing Adam Smith's system of natural liberty in terms of a price mechanism governing a system in dynamic general equilibrium. The machine metaphor is up front, but there is no account of the materiality of machinery. The invisible hand operates an invisible machine. Da-da-da. Okay, so here's where I started to wonder about Hazel Henderson, and it turns out she left her body last year, so too bad, Hazel. Maybe Hazel Henderson read this book like before she passed on. Maybe she's like, I'm out of here. Somebody wrote a great book. I don't need to be. I doubt it, but okay, photosynthesis. Okay, so this is where you're getting into, the real thermodynamics. And so this is what I based my paper on for my environmental economics course. But this book, this Jeremy Walker book, it's not just about that one class I did the environmental economics. It goes into several classes that I took. It's based, like I said, it's basically